Thank you, Jonathan. Jack Heath, J-Dog on the boards. Welcome to Monday, a milder Monday, milder week, and we usher in April, no fooling. J-Dog on the boards. We have a lot going on, and we, of course, live, local, and worldwide. Hey, Alexa, hey, Google, play the Pulse of an H. Good morning, New Hampshire. Good morning, Maine. Good morning, New England. Good morning, worldwide. The Pulse of an H. Our poll question this morning has to do with what's going on in the world, especially the Middle East. And we'll come back to that in one moment. But our poll question up on X this morning, J-Dog will have the results for you from Friday, is do you think the U.S. economy, do you think the economy will get worse this summer, yes or no, than it is presently, yes or no? And that would not be a good thing. That would not be a good thing. The poll question is up today. J-Dog.
Will a U.S.-Iran resolution happen sooner rather than later? 75% saying no, 25% saying yes.
It's really the main focus of the show today. And let me start with that. But J-Dog, I hope you had a okay weekend. No? Okay? No?
I'm in Cleveland this upcoming weekend, so I think I'm going to have a better weekend this weekend than last.
You got a busy schedule there in Cleveland. Yeah, good for you. All right. Yesterday, I just want to start with something, and I'll come back to at least concerns yours truly has, and we're going to hear from Dean Spiliotis, one of our partners and sponsors, Southern Hampshire University, on the political observation side of things, with the news of more and more U.S. troops now in the region of the situation in Iran and in the Middle East, and we're going to see what there are reports that the president is, and some of these are media, I don't know, stretches. Some of them may be true. The president and the Joint Chiefs and the military always have plans. They always have multiple plans. What the president, what we end up doing, who knows? But there are reports ranging from everything that we're going to send in special ops supported by military troops into the heart of Iran and in the uranium, 1,000 pounds of uranium, which can be used obviously for peaceful and non-peaceful nuclear ambitions, and we're going to seize that or take control of it. But that means boots in the ground in this Iranian situation and all the uncertainties, and sparking a lot of concerns because of the number of troops in the region. You saw last week a number of 82nd Airborne, Marines, but the total troop force now is swelling in the region, and I'm not sure, I'm being candid, if that's not a show of strength, for negotiation strength, for reaching an agreement strength, or is this because we are, in fact, going to put quite a bit of boots in the ground to end this thing? Just remember, we've had a real expert on the program, Tim Hafner. I didn't schedule him today, but we'll get him this week or tomorrow. He's a retired fighter pilot living in Durham, New Hampshire, and he's been a phenomenal military expert for us. And he pointed out 2 or 3 weeks ago when I asked him point blank, can we achieve our goals, our objectives in this Iranian situation with air power and strategic airstrikes alone, or do we need boots in the ground to finish it, to verify? Because the Iranian folks, the bad guys, have put so much stuff underground. You remember, I mean, do I have to remind anyone out there the situation in Gaza with Hamas and how elaborate the underground stuff was, and how Hamas would just go down with the hostages or weapons. And that was just in Gaza. But in the Iranian situation with the mountains and how many years they've been putting stuff underground, I asked Tim Hafner, our military expert locally, can we achieve this, what we're trying to do here, neutralize Tehran, neutralize the Islamic State, the terrorist ambitions, and neutralize and have safe passage with the Strait of Hormuz with just air pounding them by the air. And he said he didn't know of any war or mission that was really successful over time without boots in the ground. He said you need boots in the ground to go get the underground stuff and verify. So that may be, at this point, inevitable. But here we are, March 30th. You can go back when this thing started, and a lot of boots in the ground raises a lot of concerns. And I'm not the commander in chief or sitting in the situation room, because boots in the ground means potential more casualties, which is part of military conflict. The president's acknowledged that. We've had a number that have already given all or gave all. So you have more boots in the ground, then they can be put in harm's way. They will be in harm's way. They already are in harm's way, but you know what I'm saying? If they go into a military situation and anything's fortified, surface to air missiles, drones, and this thing gets messier and costlier in many respects. But what I'm concerned about most is, keeping an eye on the objectives, not keep moving the goal line, and how long this goes. I mean, a couple of weeks to clean things up is a lot different than a couple of months. And the latter concerns me. It really does. And I certainly don't think there's broad support for this administration. I wish there was more at times, but there's not. I mean, you saw this past weekend, the so-called No Kings protest, and I'm not going to get into that, but a lot of it was about the Middle East. And keep in mind, the president is about halfway through that period of time with Congress before he really has to get their approval. And I think there was only about another, probably 3+ weeks of that, another 30 days. So I really just think that this is going to get to a situation where I just hope it's sooner than later, like anything. I really do. Because a prolonged war, a prolonged military conflict with troops on the ground, jets in the area, naval presence, it only leads to the possibility of more problems. And even if we achieve more, it's going to cost more. It's just the way it is. And I'm not saying don't finish the job. That's not what I'm saying. But just do it as quickly as possible. And as I said to someone over the weekend who's quite concerned about this, I said, keep an eye on China. Russia's got their hands full with Ukraine. The energy picture is global, but keep an eye on China. And as long as this is a U.S., Israel, and as long as whoever's calling the shots in Tehran is firing drones and missiles into places like Saudi Arabia and other Arabic countries, all they're doing is ticking off the other Arabic countries in the region. Iran's not getting any more friends. They're isolated. So as long as if it's us and what's left, I mean, no one has seen the most recent Ayatollah, the supreme quote unquote leader. No one's even seen the guy. I don't even know if he's alive. So I don't know who's calling the shots. And other countries are now getting involved in trying to broker some peace. I heard Pakistan, Egypt, or not peace, but an agreement, end this thing with some kind of an agreement. And we're in that window, and I hope it's just a week or so or two, not a month. I really do. That's just me. Some commentary, 603-228-2080. I wanted to take a moment, and it should not be just a moment, but I posted something yesterday online on my social media page that I use primarily to promote this show here at the Pulse of NH. And let me just read it to you, because I think it got a lot of reaction, but I think it needs to be said. So yesterday was March 29th. It was Sunday, March 29th. And you might say, okay, other than Palm Sunday, Jack, week before Easter, what's your point? March 29th, what's your point? Well, yesterday was National Vietnam Veterans Day. And I think it's very appropriate because of what's going on. Yesterday was National Vietnam Veterans Day. And about 8 or 9 million Americans at some point served in Southeast Asia or Vietnam during that war. As unpopular as it was halfway through or towards the end, many Vietnam veterans in our audience were never thanked when they came home. They were scorned. They were never thanked. They were called baby killers and worse. And I remind you that less than 1% of our population serves in the military today. And like Vietnam or the Middle East, the military, don't get mad at them. If you protested Saturday in Portsmouth or Concord, don't get mad at the military. The men and women in the military and their families do not set any policy or politics. They just serve. Less than 1% serve. The Army, the Vietnam veterans, the Marines, they just served. Navy, frogmen, they just served. They just served. And that's what the military does. And that's why you can protest. They keep us free. But I think it's important to remember that yesterday was National Vietnam Veterans Day. And too many of those Vietnam veterans were never properly thanked when they came home. Many are in their mid to upper 70s, and they probably still hold that compartment inside. Many were ashamed to wear their uniform when they came home. Many were not proud to say they served in Vietnam, and many are proud, and they should be proud. But they should be thanked as all veterans of all conflicts and war. Korea, Afghanistan, Iraq, the global war on terror, and now in the Middle East. And we just need to remember that they don't set the policies. And yesterday was National Vietnam Veterans Day. And I thank each and every Vietnam veteran and their families and their spouses for their service. Sorry it took so damn long. Some commentary as well. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an H. Dean Spiliotis on deck next. Hey, Alexa, Google, play the Pulse of an H. Back in a moment.
Sundays at 3 on the you never miss a moment. It's Good Morning New Hampshire with Jack Heath on the Pulse of New Hampshire.
All right, we are back on a very busy Monday. A lot going on in the world, and it does kind of overshadow a lot here at home, but maybe not on the economy. And that's what a lot of people like me, yours truly, keeping an eye on. And Dean Spiliotis, Southern New Hampshire University, one of our political analysts and all-stars, joining us early. He'll be with us tomorrow because I want to kind of get his take on what moved over the weekend and what's happening. And Dean joins us, political science professor, Southern New Hampshire University. Good morning, Dean.
Hey, good morning, Jack.
So we could go to how the week ended, and I got to tell you, dysfunction continues in Congress. I see U.S. Senator Jeanne Shaheen's actually leading a bipartisan group of lawmakers to Asia. She's probably glad she's that far away. I mean, it looked like even though the TSA agents are probably going to get paid today because of the executive order by the president, that took too long. It looked like the Senate had come up with the funding before Mike Johnson in the House because of the Border Patrol and ICE funding not being part of that Senate deal. That he, wouldn't go along with it. So lawmakers leave town. Partial government shutdown continues. Dysfunction. Let's just start there and tell me the political ramifications here at home before I go to the Middle East.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Jack. I was listening to a member of Congress over the weekend saying that this sort of government by shutdown has become way too common in Congress. I mean, we've had shutdowns before, but now this is becoming almost a quarterly event. It's become kind of a standard part of kind of political sparring between the parties, and that's unfortunate for all the reasons we can point to. But hopefully, the TSA agents will get paid today. But there's still the larger issue of a partial shutdown. And interesting, the dynamics of this changed a little bit over the weekend because for a while there, Republicans were able to point to Democrats and say they're doing this for their left wing and they're not really getting much to show for it. But now this has basically become an intra-party battle between the Republican caucus in the House and the Republican caucus in the Senate. The bill passed unanimously in the Senate. All Republicans voted for it. It probably would have passed in the House, but Speaker Johnson, in consultation with Donald Trump, decided to not allow it to a vote. So we're now seeing a whole level of kind of intra-party sparring between Thune supporters and Mike Johnson and Trump supporters.
But it's just, Dean, it's just a complete dysfunctional mess down there in Congress. I mean,
absolutely.
Anyone who works for a living looks at how we're running this government. We have a $39 trillion debt. No one's talking about the fact, and they should be, that Social Security is in jeopardy in 5 or 6 years if you want that check to be full.
Yep.
We have a costly military hostility situation going on in the Middle East. They can't keep the government open more than 6 or 8 weeks. One side, the whole goal of one side is to obliterate the other politically. Everything's about a victory or a win. Do they understand, Senator Schumer and Thune, that everyone views them as losers, not winners? Do they get that?
Yeah. It's just that they're responding, I think, to the kind of political incentives and political pressure, in the institution. Now that you could argue that those incentives and that the pressure has become distorted in really significant ways. But what's really galling is to then go on a 2-week vacation when the government is still partially shut down. That's another layer that I think people just can't relate to.
Can I throw this one out there? But again, I think in 8th grade, well, you teach college, so I certainly think one of your sophomore, freshman classes could throw this out there. But I think an 8th grade class would throw this out there. If you're one of these leaders in Washington on Friday and the House comes up with this surprise, why wouldn't you say, I'm ordering members to stay here and not take a recess while we have unfinished work to do for the people's business, and they're going to stay here and not go on recess? Why did they cancel that? Why did they keep them here? And if lawmakers leave, well, then they're AWOL.
Yeah, well, I think it's a symptom of the kind of institutional breakdown within Congress where, what I heard from legislators over the weekend was, senators saying, well, we passed this bill unanimously, so now it's not our problem, it's the House's problem. And the House said, this bill is a bad bill. Johnson was very colorful in his description of what the Senate sent over to him. And so each side just kind of leaves it like it's the other side's, it's the other chamber's problem. We're going to go home for 2 weeks.
Yeah. All right. I want to just go to the Middle East for a moment. I had said, and I gave a lot of intro, so I'm not going to repeat it all, Dean, but we've had this great military expert live on my show a few days a week, a retired fighter pilot from Durham, Tim Hafner, and he said a few weeks ago, the only way, given how the regime in Tehran ran things and knew what we could do from the air, they've been putting stuff underground for decades. He said the only way you're going to really verify all this is to put troops in the ground to win this thing. or achieve the goals you
Yeah.
want. He said that 2 weeks ago, and it looks like that's what we're doing. Is Congress? Hold on, is Congress? And I for one, am not looking forward or feel very good and comfortable, even though I support the military in every which way, to see something more than 3 or 4 weeks of troops on the ground anywhere in and around or in Iran, in Iran. I just think it's too precarious, too dangerous, too costly in many, many ways, not just the troops, but everything. And this thing better be more short-lived than long-lived. And I'm not sure I'm getting the feeling of if that's going to be the case. What are you sensing, given the number of troops that are now in the Middle East?
Well, not only the number of troops, but there's been a lot of reporting out of the Pentagon that they are planning a very long-term potential troop presence. Now, that doesn't mean that'll happen, but they're certainly planning for it. I mean, it feels like we basically reached an inflection point in which our military has done a fantastic job of degrading Iran's military infrastructure, but obviously they still maintain the ability to cause chaos and influence global economic markets. So I think President Trump feels now that for him to declare victory, he's going to have to in some way figure out how to get the upper hand in the Strait of Hormuz and the Gulf. More broadly. Now, whether that's taking over oil production facilities on Kharg Island or having a presence on, some of the other islands or the shores of Iran, we just don't know. But it just feels like we're increasingly moving in that direction. Now, I think Trump would like kind of a, brief special operations maneuver, kind of like what we saw with Maduro. But we're also sending in the 82nd Airborne and Marine Expeditionary Units. That's a different thing completely.
Yeah, and what does your gut say? Because you studied history. I don't want to bore a political science professor, but I could remind people the quiz questions I could ask, and most people are going to get them wrong. When do we start sending advisors to Southeast Asia? What president? And a lot of people would say Kennedy, not Eisenhower. I mean, we saw several administrations. I mean, LBJ, Johnson passed away with Vietnam on his doorstep, and you look at Nixon. I mean, you look at the whole thing, and I'm like, Kennedy, and look how much that escalated. 9 million. Yesterday was National Vietnam Veterans Day to honor veterans. Yesterday, March 29th. No one really knows that, and they weren't thanked when they came home. 9 million Americans were involved in that, or almost 9, in that war. What, more than 50,000 American casualties at least. World War II was different because talk about a justified war. I mean, we were attacked by the Japanese and World War, and the Nazis. But you look at the Middle East, Iraq, Afghanistan, and here we are. And I just worry that when you see these many troops in a region, and thank goodness China is being quiet and behaving as it pertains to Taiwan, I just get a little nervous here.
Yeah, well, and we're, like you said, we're kind of beyond simply inserting some quote advisors in there militarily, given the number of troops that are being deployed to the region. And this stuff, it becomes, as we know from all these other experiences you mentioned, it sort of very slowly gains momentum, and then all of a sudden you're in much deeper than you thought you would be, and that's always a concern.
Yeah. Dean always well, again, if you have a Dean Speliotis gut on here we are, March 30th.
Yeah.
Let's go to April 30th before we get into May. Tell me what's going on in the Middle East or Iran, the Strait of Hormuz with the United States, if you had to say 1 month from now. I'd tell you the picture I'd like to see. You ready? How about if I do it?
Yeah, sure.
Strait of the Hormuz is no longer in the news because ships are passing safely from all nations in and through the long Strait of Hormuz. In Iran, there was a one drone strike that fizzled, kind of like North Korea. American troops, the Navy, and our ships stay in the region, but most of the troops have been redeployed. We're keeping a small, observation team of 2,500 troops in neighboring Saudi Arabia and other allied nations. And the Iranian people appear to be answering to military generals versus an Ayatollah that they're not even sure he's alive. But I mean, that's about as good as I can picture.
Yeah, I mean, the original military operation timeline had been 4 to 6 weeks, which gives us about another 2 weeks until mid-April. And then the question is, the couple weeks after that, will there be some kind of resolution with the Strait? I mean, I'm not an economist, but I'm hearing a lot from international economists that if that Strait doesn't open up pretty quickly, and now you have the Houthis over at the other strait with the Red Sea starting to kind of poke up their heads in Yemen as well. If that stuff isn't dealt with in the next few weeks, it's going to have long-term economic shortages, economic ramifications. So you got to hope that what you're saying is correct. My fear is that while we may have major military operations completed, I think that my concern is that the kind of global economic oil trade, all that stuff is still going to be a little precarious.
Yeah. Well, again, the Houthis in Yemen, we should, that's what those F-35s and those jets, you can take care of that pretty much from the air. But thank you, Dean.
Sure thing, Jack.
All right. Again, I support, I know how good our military is, how good they are. We have a lot of them there, including our refuelers from Pease. Let's not forget that. The Air National Guard refuelers, they are the best. But let's keep an eye on that timetable. I really hope by mid to late April that we are over the backside of this thing and have done a lot of good. I mean, meaning neutralizing or destroying a terrorist regime's military, controlling the uranium so no nuclear stuff gets developed, taking as much of their drone surface-to-air missiles as we can out of the picture. And the Strait of Hormuz, 90% is operating, and things get back to some degree of not certainty, because I don't know, by the way, you always hear that line that markets don't like uncertainty. Markets don't like uncertainty. I don't know if we're ever going to see certain times. And I mean that, you look at the world and I'm just, it may never be that. Maybe it never was, by the way. But we want some, I think people do get concerned that the last thing we need is a prolonged or protracted, for lack of a better term, war in the Middle East. It's not a good formula. Not a good formula. But again, supportive to achieve the goals. And maybe we had no choice, but at some point, people have to understand the mission, feel it was worth it, and move on. But we'll see where it goes. Hey, Alexa, Google, play the Pulse of an H. Back in a moment.
News You're listening to Good Morning New Hampshire with Jack Heath on the Pulse of New Hampshire.
All right, we are back. Power outage in Dover, New Hampshire, reported to an area they've been doing. I'm not saying it's because of the road work. I'm not saying that, but they've been doing a lot of big truck road work over there. And it happens to be where our studios for WTSN are located. So Mike Pomp is fine. He was in this morning, but could not do a show. Internet, the power, everything. We're streaming and we're on our network, but no Mike this morning. But he's okay. He's okay. Don't worry if you miss Mike at 5:30 this morning or 9. And power, we'll see where it's at over in Dover. But obviously someone hit a line, a number of homes affected this morning, and a perfectly good, nice broadcast facility and studio. But nothing we can do. The power is, we'll see where it's at. All right. Hey, Alexa, Google Play the Pulse of an H. J-Dog on the boards, Jack Heath, and we are looking at milder temps today.
On YouTube. Yep.
And we're on YouTube, streaming the first hour of the show at the Pulse of an H on YouTube. And remember, everything with us is the Pulse of an H, including our daily poll question on X at the Pulse of an H. Do you think the U.S. economy is going to get worse as we get into summer? Yes or no? With uncertainties, particularly in the Middle East. We just heard and gave you an update. Stephen Junot was senior economist, global economist with Bank of America, one of our great partners and sponsors, a great partner and sponsor, was on just last week. And even with the uncertainties in the Middle East, he still sees or saw growth and resiliency were his main points in this economy, not retraction, certainly not anything that begins with an R like recession, but he still sees growth versus shrinkage, but we will see. The longer things go, the greater chance for uncertainty. Just the way it is. J-Dog, fun time of year sports-wise. I know you're off to Cleveland next week, but you got the Red Sox.
Next week, try this Thursday.
Oh, you're going Thursday?
Thursday, yes.
How are you going to get by and live without me?
I've done it before. I'll do it again.
Do you want me to get on quick, like call AAA or just go and get some reservations and join you out in Cleveland?
You do that, you won't be returning.
All right. Baseball, hockey, basketball, we got it all going on. So 'tis the season. But whatever you're doing. Hey, let me tell you what's coming up this show. I'll get some fun stuff for you. Jennifer Vaughn, WMUR's one of her main anchors. Jennifer Vaughn will be coming in the 11 o'clock hour. And she's doing a very important book, real important, on behavioral health, mental health for our first responders and veterans. And she's worked with a family, and she's written several books. She's actually a very tenacious, prolific writer and author. She's had several books for kids, for adults, just sort of just great novels. Really good person, good writer. I don't know. I guess, as they say, I wrote a few novels that got published a number of years ago. Salem 6, Rebecca's Rising. Just a story I came up with looking at some of the nonfiction events from the Salem witch trials near where I grew up, and my family was involved in both sides of the witch trials, believe it or not, including Rebecca Nurse, direct descendant of her, and she was hanged as a witch, the last person in Salem at early 70s. Years old, which unbelievable back then. But I don't know. Writing is a very arduous, painful experience, and I just sometimes don't have the patience for it anymore. There's several short stories I'd like to do about life, but mental health, Jennifer Vaughn, it's very important, and we don't do enough. We don't talk about it enough in our society. Behavioral health, mental health, and she's written a book that's ready to come out. She's working with different publishers to look at this on mental health, and it's a great book. It's got a great New Hampshire base of a family who lost their son. We've had the family on in the past. Phil Tobbs from the Mission worked with this family as well, and we had the Coyne family on, but their son was a real Marine. Not that all Marines aren't real, but I mean carried the heavy pack and long gun and pretty serious battlefield, Middle East deployments, and places like Iraq, and came home, and then New Hampshire State Police, was head of the SWAT team, SWAT commander, just a real leader, but loved by his fellow troopers and law enforcement. I don't think anyone had a bad thing to say about him, but he was battling a battle deep inside, a real battle deep inside that no one really saw until the symptoms started bubbling out. And he, at the end, I think was living with his parents, and they could just see signs that weren't their son. He just was acting so differently, and no one knows what these. I was talking over the weekend with someone, or the end of last week, about this, what horse, equine therapy can do, and they're doing that up at the Franklin Military Veterans Campus, part of Easter Seals and Veterans Count, where May 13th I'll be doing my 12-hour radiothon, my 12th annual, but that's not where I'm going right now on this. But horses, canines, I was at a place this weekend talking with a gentleman who's in the fire department, world firefighter, and he's dealt a lot with PTSD. And he had a beautiful, wonderful, sort of a rescue Belgian Malinois service dog in the restaurant. And this dog was, I think, 6 years old, and was going to be euthanized, which is just a terrible thing to think about with such a beautiful dog and animal. And this dog had seen some military service and just sort of fell between the cracks. And this firefighter was able to adopt him. And that dog sat by his side and was very friendly. And I just talked about what the dog's done for him medicinally, physically, with his triggers. And what no one really understands, and I've been around, I've learned from these veterans and the first responders, and we'll get into some of this later with Jennifer Vaughn, is when these triggers trigger in a veteran, someone who served in the military or a first responder, high adrenaline, when the post-traumatic, emotion, it's nothing that they can easily, they're not even aware of this when it's starting. It's a chemical, physical thing that something can trigger something. And by the time the person who's suffering from that post-traumatic stress or the trauma, the symptoms manifest, it's almost too late. They're going through that moment where they're not themselves, because the memory, the trauma is literally taken over their metaphysical being in every aspect, chemically, physically, mentally, emotionally, control-wise, temperament. I mean, everything you can think of. And what I've seen, which is absolutely amazing, and speaking of Belgian Malinois, but and the Navy SEALs down at Fort Pierce, Florida, are working with Phil Taub and Smooth the Mission to get more of these dogs who have served in military combat and deployment. And then when they're physically done serving, like the veteran, they're trained for emotional support and detection. And each dog, it can take $15,000 to $25,000 to adequately train these dogs. But I have a buddy who was served in the was a Green Beret, but ended up as a Night Stalker in the U.S. Army. And a lot of people do not know what a Night Stalker is or what they do. They don't know what a Night Stalker does. And this Night Stalker veteran lives in up near Franconia Notch, and I've known him for years. And his PTSD hit him hard when he was done and got out. And his wife and a friend contacted me at a time when I was doing a lot more work on the canine side, when we were raising money here through Benny Media and my show and some events at the Wentworth, the wonderful, beautiful Wentworth by the Sea Country Club in Rye, and raising money for the one of the things that the SEALs are doing out of Fort Pierce, Florida, is these dogs. And so they were able to get a dog through Canada, post all the COVID crap, who was going to go, his dog's name was Dawson, was going to go to another special ops guy, Navy SEAL, but the dog and the person, they have to be a fit. That's how magical this thing is. The dog has to be a fit with you, the veteran, or you, the first responder. It's not just a random, oh, here's a dog, like when you go to the kennel and you adopt or you buy a dog, and here's a dog. A dog has to be compatible with the person. And they're experts that know how to do this. And that's why it's cost money. But I just know with this one Night Stalker what the dog did, because he was telling me, I met with him alone and had a beer with him and just talked with him. And he said he was having a hard time, just one day at a time. And he was in the woods a lot hunting at the time. And he said it was just, he'd go out for hours at a time and just try and come up with reasons not to end it, and to shoot himself and kill himself, suicide. That's another thing we don't talk about. We don't talk about this. And yesterday was National, Honor Vietnam Veterans Day, and no one did you know that? Did the person next to you know that listening? Yesterday, March 29th, Sunday. Yes, it was Palm Sunday. Yes, Easter's next Sunday, but it was Honor Vietnam Veterans Day yesterday. And I thank the families and those veterans who served in Vietnam and did not get a proper thank you. But we have too many veterans that are taking their own lives, especially from the multiple combat tour duty special operative world. Too many. And Aaron, I almost said his name, but my buddy, the Night Stalker, this dog Dawson has literally saved his life. Literally saved his life. Because I'll just tell you this and why it's magical. The dog senses, because the dog is trained to sense in the handler when those triggers start, the chemical, the physical, the emotional, when that, whatever it is, could be a sound, could be a moment, could be someone who looked like someone, could be whatever. The dog senses it before the person even knows it. The dog senses it before the person knows it. And the dog is trained to basically interrupt the handler, whether it's playing with them. And what I've been told is sometimes a dog will actually jump up on the chest, because these dogs are bigger than a little dog, but they're not huge. It may only be 60, 70, 50, 60, 70 pounds. But they're strong. They'll jump up on the chest like they're jumping up to kiss you. And they'll actually push the handler down. They'll push the handler down onto the floor. And it could be in the living room or office. Push the person down. Or it could be in public. And they'll start to they'll actually lay on the handler on the chest. They'll actually play and lick and lay on the person to sort of stop that chemical PTS trigger that's happening, the reaction, to stop it, to absorb it, to stop it, to get the other things like joy, emotion when you have your dog and the dog wants to play with you. And that's why, even if it's not a service dog, when you go home, and I don't know what it is, dogs sometimes think you're never coming back, and you go back from work and you go home after a long day. That dog that greets you when you go in after a crappy day on a Monday, that dog that's licking you, playing with you, loving you. You don't know it, but if you had a blood pressure cuff, and you could take your blood pressure 5 minutes after you went home, and your dog is loving you and playing with you and wanting to jump and play with you and just hug you and hug the dog, I bet your blood pressure drops noticeably. But that's why we need more support for the canines. And it's funny, I started this segment, but it's really important. And I'm glad we went through it. But Jennifer Vaughn's coming in at 11, and she's working on a book based on this one New Hampshire Marine, former state police commander of the SWAT team who took his own life. She's writing a book to help others, whether they are firefighters, police officers, troopers, EMTs, soldiers, National Guard, combat or not. And we don't talk about it. We don't talk about mental health and behavioral health enough. And you don't even have to be a first responder or a veteran. More families, more kids are affected by anxiety, stress, and depression than we talk about. And if we don't talk about it, do you think the problem is going to get better or worse? Hey, Alexa, Google Play, The Pulse of an Age. Commentary 603-228-2080. Back in a moment.
107.7 W. Search and subscribe to the Pulse of NH. Catch Good Morning New Hampshire streaming on YouTube with the Pulse of New Hampshire. This is Good Morning New Hampshire with Jack Heath on the Pulse of New Hampshire.
Well, looks like we're welcoming in April finally, and J-Dog going to be about 65 for a high, maybe some rain, but a milder week on Wednesday as we bring in April, and it feels, because it was a little, excuse me, Saturday was a little nippy, a little cool, and yesterday was nice, but today's even milder. And J-Dog, I'm encouraged. I'm seeing golf ranges and golf courses starting to open. People out and about.
But that's okay.
Yeah, people out and about.
Well, I mean, we had the winter, as I said, some of the golf courses, they have the patches of brown and green. Again, wait till the spring, it'll get really, really green.
Yeah. Nope, it's coming. It's one thing that we can, those leaves will come back. And boy, I tell you, the landscaping and homeowners, if you have a place and you're out there looking at the down branches and just cleaning up, it was a real New Hampshire, New England weather for winter for sure. So we'll keep you posted. J-Dog, reminder at the Pulse of an H, you can learn about the reservations. Will go quickly. There's still some spots left. Pulseofanh.com. What did I say?
You just said the Pulse of NH.
Oh, dog.com. Need to put, well,
yeah, that .com if you want to.
Pulseofanh.com. Pulseofanh.com. British Landscapes Tour. Our friends at Colette Travel. April will be the month where this will probably sell out. Next October, we head out. It's a nice, great trip to start in Edinburgh, Scotland, and then take our time through several villages in the English countryside, including where Shakespeare's house in Stratford and Chester and wonderful places. And then the trip ends in London, stay at the Park Plaza, and plenty to see there. And part of it's on a train through the English countryside. There's a great canal or river tour when you're still around the castles in Scotland. You can look at it's just a wonderful, but the thing with Colette that makes it magic, make it really work, is their attention to detail. They've been doing it over 100 years. Rhode Island, family owned and operated. And Andrew and his team, they pay attention to every detail. Getting you to the airport so you don't have to park and drive, and that's not much fun if you're going to some airports, you know that. And your baggage, getting you checked in, and this will be long after any TSA wrinkles, I hope. And they're getting paid today, I imagine. Talk about dysfunctional Congress. What an embarrassment. This was despicable. And by the way, they shouldn't be on a 2-week recess. The leadership should have kept them in Washington to finish the people's business. That's my opinion. But I'm not House Speaker or Senate Majority Leader. But if I was, they wouldn't be out on a 2-week recess after the House and Mike Johnson, the Republicans, said no to the Senate deal. This is ridiculous. But anyway, the trip, go to the pulseofnh.com, British Landscapes. It's a wonderful trip. Pricing's incredible, but what you get for it, the value. And Colette has all these relationships and experts on the ground who live there, whether you're in and around Westminster, and when you get to England and Scotland and the towns, it's just, they have great guests, great experts who will take you around and show you where you want to shop, where you want to stop, what cathedral, what, some of those churches go back to the 10th century, 11th century, where you want to eat, and check it out with the pulseofanh.com. Also check out the New Hampshire Dollar Saver. That has a different home. I think it is New Hampshire Dollar Saver, right, J-Doc?
NHDollarsaver.com. I'll have my deal of the day in the 11 a.m. hour.
All right. And you get some sun popping out, and we'll keep you posted on all the above. And coming up, the State House. I have no idea, because of what's happening internationally and nationally, the dysfunction in Congress, the Middle East, the latest, the economy. No idea what's happening at the New Hampshire State House, but Anna Brown has every idea. She knows. Citizens Count coming up with an update for you, top of the 10. And a little bit later on, Jennifer Vaughn will say hi in our studios, and her very important book on mental health and the families of first responders and military and veterans. Hey, Alexa. Hey, Google. Play the Pulse of an H. We are back in a moment.